Hi, everybody. Welcome back to LaraChat Live. We're at episode number 24 now, and we have some of our regular guests, Eric and Matt, the ever quiet Matt and the ever loud Eric, and we have one of our, I guess, semi-regular Daniel Bushkinets, D Bushy on the on LaraChat forums. And he's been on a couple of shows, and we've also got our main guest, Tony Lea, not to be confused with Tony Lea, Lua, etc. Tony Lea. And Tony runs a cool site, which I actually did not know about before we decided to have him on the show, in devdojo.com. Got a really cool looking interface, and I've been checking it out a little bit, and I think it's actually really cool. He also works on an open source project called Voyager, and he works for a company called Control Group. So we wanted to get a little bit of information of who are you, Tony? Let us know.
Cool, yeah. So I guess I'll probably start off from where I started with programming, and it's particularly PHP. So I was big into CodeIgniter. I know you guys probably know CodeIgniter. And then I was starting to learn about Ruby on Rails, and I found their videos and just like how easy things were. I was just so impressed with it. So I was actually going to move to Ruby on Rails, and then I had a bunch of projects that were on PHP, and it was so funny because I was at this point where I was like fighting myself in my head, like, should I switch to Rails, and should I go to PHP? And then I found out about Laravel, and so since Laravel version 3, and this was before Composer, so this was when you just downloaded a zip, you threw it in a folder, and you created your project. So then I found about Laravel, and it was my saving grace to PHP. So then I was, from then on, I've been just the biggest fan of Laravel, creating projects with it, and then just really having fun myself. So I live in San Diego, and I do have 2 daughters and a beautiful wife, and I am currently working at a company called the Control Group, and they have several offices in San Diego. There's one by the beach, there's one in Little Italy, and then there's one just a little bit north of Little Italy. And so I work for them, and we do these background check websites. You may have heard of them. There's Instant Checkmate, Truth Finder, and those are some of their flagship products, and they make a lot of money from these products. There's big marketing, and you can basically look up anybody with their first and last name and city and state and find out a bunch of information about them. So I've been working for them for about 3 years, and I always have side projects going on, and one of my side projects is the Dev Dojo. So that's kind of just where you go to learn about PHP or about Laravel. And I actually was a big fan of Ryan Bates. I don't know if you guys know who that is. So he was the one who created Rails casts. And this was when Ruby on Rails was really big. So as I was learning Ruby on Rails, I found his site, and I was like, man, this tutorial site is really cool. Like, you can learn all kinds of things about Rails. And so in the back of my head, I was always like, I want to create a site like this. So which is why Dev Dojo came about. And I know Jeffrey Way has Laracast, which is amazing, and I actually have a subscription there too. But I think there's room for both of them, and I think just having more educational content is always good. So I do the Dev Dojo on my my free time, and I actually would like to one day make it my full-time job, but just with finances and having a family, it's just not bringing enough revenue as of yet. But I have high hopes for it, and I also built Laravel Voyager, which is an open source admin for your Laravel. So a lot of people download Voyager, and they're like, oh, cool, it's a CMS, but actually want to clear the air and just let people know it's not a CMS, it's just an admin. So by default, you will get some like posts and pages table, and you can include that as dummy data. So you can also choose not to have that, but it is just an admin for your application. So if you want to build a SaaS app, you can build your application, build out all the front end, and then whenever you need to manage users or products or anything that your application uses, then you can add Voyager to the back end, and then you can manage all your users, products, and whatever else. That's kind of just an overall encompassing, what I do and what I work on my side projects. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I actually had a little bit of a mind-blown moment with Tony because Tony has my San Diego Laravel user groups, and I had met him before. I like the guy. He's very charismatic and nice and a fun guy to talk to, but he's pretty modest. And I met him a couple times, and then I think at the last Laravel meetup, I'm talking to him, and I known who he had worked for because we had that conversation in the past. But then he's like, "Yeah, no, I run the site Dev Dojo." I'm like, "Wait." He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Dude, I've been signed up with Dev Dojo for like 6 months now. What do you mean you run it?" And it's funny because I ended up finding Dev Dojo because I was looking for some videos that they weren't on LaraCast, and I stumbled across Tony's YouTube channel where he has some of his free content. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I like this guy's style. He doesn't have the silky smooth voice as let's say Jeffrey Way, but he's very easy to listen to." And so I ended up signing up for his service, and I never even put the physical appearance together until he said something, and then it was like, holy smokes! So my mind was like blown when he told me that. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I also created Voyager." I'm like, "Laravel News, you're the creator of Voyager? What the hell? Why don't you tell me these things?" So it was kind of this crazy mind-blowing moment where I had this like great talent, somebody is contributing to the community in so many ways, sitting right next to me, and I didn't even realize it. So thank you.
Thanks, dude. Whenever I am like not hanging out with my family or, doing whatever else, just trying to get away from the computer, even if I'm not at work, my head is just constantly, I'm checking out Laravel news, checking out Twitter, Laravel stuff. I'm either doing a tutorial, but I'm sure we're all kind of the same. Like, I cannot take myself away from my computer just because I enjoy it so much.
Yeah, I have the same, I don't know whether to call it an addiction or a problem of some sorts, but the same thing. I'll be hanging out with the family, and then I'm zoned out, and I'm staring off into the sky or whatever, and my wife just looks over at me. "You're thinking about code, aren't you?" I hate when she does that because she knocks me out of that train of thought, and then I have to start over and ignore her.
No, maybe I was thinking of other women, I swear.
Right.
So Tony, sorry, Matt, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I don't distinctly have those moments where I'm just like thinking about code. It's just everything's a blur. You know what I mean? It's like the day-to-day goes by, and it's like, what was I working on again? Oh yeah, okay. No, that part makes sense. There's got to be something more. Is there something else? Maybe there's something new I can look at. And it's just that constant repetition of things,
I feel like you need to get your head checked. Something's not right.
I was going to say, see, Matt is our Neo. He actually lives in the Matrix. That's why, he's never in the real world. So
there is no spoon.
That's right.
All right. Maybe I should bring this back on topic. I wanted to ask a couple questions about Control Group. You mentioned how it does like background checks and so forth. Is this US only, or are you guys like, do you do the checks nationwide or internationally and so forth?
Yeah, right now it is US only. So I think they're looking at data sources for possibly doing overseas or other people who are not in the US. But it uses like just some popular APIs, and I really can't say too much about all the APIs that we use, but one of them I can say is we use LexisNexis data. So that is one of our main sources, but there are several sources that we have that we get data like social data, and then information about your address and other things. And we have a data team that actually brings all the data together and puts it in like a nice format that you can read, because normally you have all these APIs that are laid out everywhere, and some that even have criminal records in California or different states. So we have this huge it's basically it's a data service that we have, that we get all of our APIs that talk to each other, and then we build this report for this person, and then it's a monthly service that people pay. Right now I think it's like $24 or $25 a month.
See, all of a sudden, I noticed Matt's getting nervous as soon as you said, maybe we'll offer it in Canada. Matt's all of a sudden getting a little nervous. What's wrong, Matt? Got something to hide, buddy?
I have nothing to hide. I'm an open book. I swear, completely open book.
Eric, Matt and I are Canadians. By virtue, Canadians are innocent and they're the greatest people in the world. I'd be looking at yourself. Or maybe New York Danny over there. I don't know. Look like
Don't worry about me. Don't worry about me. Okay, I'm fine over here. I got nothing to hide.
I don't know. You're looking like you're mean mugging me over there. I got questions.
So a lot of the stuff that the control group uses, they use a lot of the latest technologies. Like people even use Go. They have like Node that they use. They do use, for the main application, they use Slim. And then I think about a year ago, the owner was talking to me and he was like, hey, we want to put together some publisher sites. And I know that you're really big into Laravel, and would you be interested in joining that team and creating some publisher sites? So I was like, hell yeah, I get to work on Laravel, and that's my day job too. So I jumped on that, and we have a few sites. You can check out wearablezone.com, and it's a site that basically has information about the latest like Fitbits, wearable devices. And there's also another one called greenfuture.io. So that one's pretty much just like a blog site, but those are all built using Voyager as the back end. So that was kind of the driving force to me building Voyager. And then it's funny because as I was building it, the content writers needed something, they were using WordPress before, but we decided we were going to go with Laravel. So the content writers have all this stuff that like all these features that they want. And I'm trying to like build it out. And I'm like, wouldn't this be cool if I could make this into an open source platform? But then there were certain integrations that we needed to tie in that were directly coupled with the company. And Voyager was actually built probably 6 months before it was released on open source. And that was because I had to remove all the coupling of, like we had API keys for like our authentication, and I had to take that out and then just use the default Laravel authentication. But there was a lot that I had to take out from Voyager since we used it strictly for our needs, and then make it more modular so that way everybody could use it.
I find that that's actually something that happens a lot with a lot of the code that even I put out as open source. It starts off as some sort of small component of something bigger that you're working on, or maybe it is the thing you're working on, and then it's essentially strip away all the stuff that was kind of, that you don't want to get out there, or is it's not supposed to go out there. And then it just becomes like, hey, this could be handy. Here you go, world.
Question about I guess it's a little bit off topic, but you mentioned at your company you have several different languages, Go, Ruby, Laravel, PHP, etc. I'm actually curious if you could, I don't know if you can talk about it, but I'm curious about how the team manages all these different languages, so to speak. So, when you hire someone, do you hire specifically for PHP or specifically for Go, or do you look more for the polyglot type of developer who can jump between?
I think right now, if they have like a strong knowledge of maybe even just some kind of like backend. So if they're like, yeah, I'm strong with PHP, or, Ruby on Rails, or I'm really good with Node.js. As long as they have some framework that they have a good knowledge of, then obviously that knowledge is transferable. But I think really whenever they look for somebody, they look for somebody who's not going to be a dick, because they don't want to hire people that they don't like working with.
Sorry, Danny.
Actually hanging out with him, and that he knows his stuff. But if you know one programming language, you can essentially continually learn more. So I would say that they look at hiring as long as you have some knowledge of a back-end programming language.
That's good to know. Jumping away from control group, going over to Dev Jojo, we haven't really talked about that much. You mentioned about worrying about that they're, I forget how you worded it and what you said, but the gist was there's room for more cast type sites, LaraCast, Dev Dojo, and etc. I actually agree with you. I'd love to see more topics geared towards someone who is maybe more senior, because I see a lot of topics that are very introductory. What's your opinion on that, or do you have a range that you like to target or focus on?
So right now, I don't have a specific range, but I do want to still be able to target people who are still beginners. So if you look at some of the courses on there, I do have like an HTML, CSS, JavaScript course. And essentially what I would plan to do is to have stuff that somebody could get started with. So if somebody really doesn't know too much about programming and they wanted to learn just the basics, they could go through the HTML, CSS, JavaScript course. And then I haven't created my introductory to PHP course, but I want to do that. And then from there, they can basically learn Laravel and then continue to go through a lot of my videos, because a lot of my videos are on Laravel. But I think that as long as they have the starting points where they can start off from HTML and then move their way up, I think that that's important. But I also would like to learn a whole bunch of other things too. Like a lot of my friends tell me about Go, and just that it's really cool, but I haven't taken the time to dive in. I'm really more of like a Vagrant guy, and a lot of people talk about Docker, and I would like to learn more about Docker. And as I learn more about it, I would like to create a course on it. So I think just kind of an overall like encompassing, it's kind of hard because I don't want to tackle everything, but I kind of want it to be a place that I can learn stuff, and then I can also teach people what I learned, because I think that's the funnest part about being a programmer, is learning these new technologies. So as I learn it, then I can continue to teach other people.
Yeah, I kind of love that idea, because from a lot of developers that I know that I talk to, when they like learn new things, they start to blog about it, right? They start to write about my experience learning this thing. But what I find interesting with your take is you kind of take the medium to the next level by saying, well, instead of me just blogging about it, I'm going to like video my journey of me learning this thing, kind of show my findings in a much more like, I think like personable and like more educational medium. Because for me, like I love blogs, but I get a lot of value out of video as well. And like, that's why like I do sign up to like different, I used to be a Railscast subscriber as well, because I used to do Ruby on Rails, and I am a LaraCast subscriber as well. I will have to check out Dev Dojo because it seems like it's pretty dope. So like, I just love that idea of like, you take on something new and then you make a video about it and like share experience and like teach what you can teach from that. I think that's like really cool.
Yeah, thanks, dude. So a lot of my stuff I have on YouTube, and I want to still be able to offer free stuff, and kind of like Jeffrey Way does too. But not only just with me learning new things and then kind of teaching, I've also kind of found a passion for video editing and creating these little geeky intros. I don't know if you guys have been to Code School before, but Code School has some of the coolest intros. Like I feel like I'm watching a Saturday morning cartoon, because their intro is so amazing, and I'm sitting there with like my bowl of cereal, like just can't wait to like watch the next episode. So I think having a nice book cover on your video, or a nice intro goes a long way, because then people, once they see the intro, then they'd be really interested in finishing out the video series.
Dude, like 100%. Like I work for a company where video is our main product, and the production team just started like actually messing around with that kind of stuff, and it's honestly night and day of the production quality of just like how much more it really adds. Just a 3-second or 5-second clip, but that really just like sharpens up the product to really make it seem really cool,
I was reading just recently talking about web videos and stuff, and how to actually make them sellable more so. And it says that within 3 seconds, if you don't have them hooked, they're never going to finish your video. So it's remarkable how pivotal those actual little intros are. Because I mean, there's tons of videos all over YouTube of different developers trying to show off, oh yeah, here's how I do this. And they always start with like, okay, everyone, so we've got, yeah, I'm just going to open Sublime here. And you're like, all right, let's just move it along. And you're just skipping it forward through the video, right? You don't care.
That sounds so much like our introduction to LaraChat Live. I mean, you
I was
guys.
gonna say, Sean, I think we need to tap Tony for some intros for LaraChat Live.
Yeah, I was thinking I'm envisioning a Simpson kind of intro. You know, you're running into I'm running you over with the car, and then you know jumping onto the couch. I think I like that idea.
Actually, I could maybe come up with something within a couple weeks, but it would probably be like a 3-second sting. But I think even that would add a nice touch to the beginning of the video, where I don't know, it'll have some kind of nice ease-in effect of like this, like a Slack or a Laravel logo, and transition over star wipe. No, I'm just kidding. It could be really cool.
That'd be dope. That'd be dope. Minus the star wipe.
See, I was thinking it'd be you remember the one episode where they fought and fit, they fought and fit, and it's when Itchy and Scratchy are just beating each other to death. Oh, fine. Whatever.
The intro? No. I've probably seen like every single Simpsons.
Yes. Yeah, I was about to say, I'm totally with you, Matt. Like Simpsons all day. Simpsons all day.
Dude, the Simpsons just haven't been what they used to be, though, right?
Yeah, I mean it's true, but you know, there's so much material there that it's just such great classic humor that like there's so many subtleties that even going back to the older episodes, I catch so much more that I'm a little bit older, and like it's great. Like I don't know.
When I watch the old ones, I'm like, oh man, that's like so funny. Like, and now it's like they're trying to compete with Family Guy. I feel like that's kind of just like slapstick humor, or just instead of actually intelligent humor.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So when I was talking to Tony and he was telling me about Dev Dojo, I'm like, well, I mean, there's LaraCast. I mean, LaraCast is like the gold standard that everybody in the community goes to, run by Jeffrey Way. How do you feel about that? Tony was like, no, who's Jeffrey Way? Really? No. And then he's like, no, I'm kidding. And so we kind of talked through it a little bit. And I'm like, oh, and you do Voyager too. You know, my buddy Matt, he has Quarks, and you're competing with him. He's like, well, what's Quarks? No, seriously, what's Quarks? I don't know. Yeah, so your other big project, Voyager, and our good buddy here, Matt, has a very similar project called Quarks. It's just the admin, like you said, it's not a full CMS. It's just an admin interface. Can you kind of explain like what that is? You kind of went into why you did it. You know, you were doing it for work, and you wanted to kind of community. But you know, just what should be the expectation people have when they download the project, and where does it fit into other projects? Like if I'm building a site, when would I go to Voyager and look to use it?
Yeah, I think that, so a lot of times when people build an application, they might say, if they're building like an e-commerce site, you know, they'll think, okay, I need a way to add products. I'm also going to need, you know, a shopping cart, and I'm going to need users to be able to log in. So they can, you know, build a lot of the functionality on the front end, where they can, you know, click on products, view the product, add it to a shopping cart. But then if they are ever like, they need to maybe delete a user or view all the users that they have on their site, they're going to have to build their own custom solution. And this may even be for them adding products too. So if you use the Faker library, where you can, you know, fake a bunch of data into your database because you just need to see what your site's going to look like with a lot of products, maybe instead of going that route, you can install Voyager, and you can actually start adding products right away. Like you're going to need to know what the products table has, and you can even build the table inside of Voyager. So you can start off by building the products table, and then maybe it needs a name, it needs a description, it needs a price. You can put all of that and create the table in Voyager, and then you can actually start adding the products. So you can start building or adding all the data for your application using Voyager, and then you can start building the front end after that. So it really is a way to, Laravel's already made it easy enough that we have this scaffolded authentication, but now using Voyager, it's even easier because you have a full admin that you can, you know, create a database table, and then after you create that database table, you add what I call bread, and it's essentially the same thing as CRUD, but it's a browse, read, edit, add, and delete functionality for that table. So you create the products table, and you can add all the rows, and then you can say that you want to add bread to that table, and now you can already add all of your products. You can edit products. You can do, basically anything if you were to build the backend admin yourself. So basically, if you want to jumpstart your application, you don't want to do a lot of work, I would recommend downloading Voyager, adding all of your data first, and then building the front end. Or you can start off by building the front end of the application, and then later on you can add Voyager, and then you'll be able to edit all of your users or your products or all of your data.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds really great because, like, I think every job I've ever had in development has always had some sort of admin component where they're like, okay, this is great. Now I need some way to manage the background. Like, I need some sort of business user who's not a developer to be able to get in there and edit some stuff and not have to, you know, create a ticket every time I want to manipulate some information on the front end site, you know? So I think there's definitely like a huge opportunity for something like that. Like, I would definitely love to see like more about both of your projects, like Voyager and Cork, just to kind of like see, you know, what's going on there. Because like literally, like I maintain an admin as well as like a front end site for the company that I work for, and it's like, I mean, it sounds great if there's a lot of stuff that's already pre-built that I can just kind of, you know, piggyback and extend, as opposed to redoing the same old basics every time we start a new project, you know?
Yeah. Now, I will say the one thing that kind of caught me off guard when I looked at Voyager was the fact that you're able to create tables. There's not a lot of solutions out there that allow you to actually create tables. And I didn't notice it. I did play with it a little bit. I didn't let Matt know, but I did check it out some. The one thing I didn't notice is when you do create a table, are you creating the models for that table? I mean, do I have access to that later as a developer to address the table through a model, or do I still need to go create the model?
No, so it doesn't create whenever you create the table, it doesn't create the model for you, but you have the option for it to create the migration. So whenever you add the table, you can select a box that will say create the migration for me, and then it will create the migration as you create the table. But then once you want to add bread to that table or the CRUD operations, then once you do that, you can choose to create the model. So whenever you add bread to a table, what it will do is it will show you all the rows that you've added for that table. Say if it's a name, it's probably going to be a text box. If it's a body, maybe you want a rich text editor. So you actually have these drop downs of different types that you want to associate with that row. And then for the product image, you can select, I want this to be an image type. So when you add bread to the table, you're saying what kind of input you want each of those rows to have. And then you can also create the model at the same time of creating the bread.
Very nice, very nice. All right, well, maybe this is a good opportunity to kind of lead into our kind of bigger topic for the group. Since we do have some big-time open source creators here with Matt and Tony, you know, Sean and I were talking about it, and you know, we've never actually been on that end of creating an open source project. Can you kind of just give us some feedback on what that's like, and what's the you know, what are some of the challenges with the open source projects, managing them and getting that contribution going, getting other people to participate? Either one of you guys.
Well, can I interject first? I actually have some open source projects from way back in the day. I made a Google Maps plugin for jQuery.
I'm sorry, Sean. I meant good open source projects. I apologize. We're talking good open source projects here.
But back in the day, you remember StumbleUpon.com? It reached #1 on StumbleUpon.com, and I took a screenshot of that. I was so proud. And
that's awesome.
That is actually pretty. I do remember StumbleUpon. That was a great site.
Dude,
yeah.
What a name drop! I love StumbleUpon. Oh my god!
No.
Whatever happened to that site?
I don't know. I'll look it up after the show. But yeah, and then the most important contribution to open source in the history of mankind is the one I made for Matt Cork's project. I made one tiny little PR to fix the bug that he made. Oh my god, I felt like it's such a hero, right, Matt?
Well, I think that every contributor is a hero.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Good answer.
Yeah. I'm running for office. I'm not. No, I do think so. From my experience of just with anything open source, I mean, my biggest thing has always been I just like to be involved. And I mean, if I see an opportunity for me to either give or start something fresh, then I just dive at it. And it does suck up a lot of time, but I find it really rewarding overall. And it's not just because, I mean, like, yeah, okay, seeing some of the numbers on like packages and stuff, it's like, woohoo, I gained whatever stars and stuff like that. And there's a bit of an ego trip to that, but it's more like it's a very rewarding thought to know that somebody has potentially saved themselves a ridiculous amount of time from having to do the same thing that they've done 100 times before, and I got to help them do that. You know what I mean? So I look at it for that sort of stuff. What about you, Tony?
Yeah, I actually have I have ulterior motives for creating an open source project. Not really, but I'm not only creating it for other people to use, but I'm also creating it for myself to use. So I told you kind of the reason why that I created Voyager, and that was because we were building it. We were building these publisher sites. But before building those publisher sites, I had released a couple scripts on Code Canyon, and one of them was called Ninja Media Script. Another one is called Hello Video. And Ninja Media Script did pretty well. I think it's over 2,000 sales right now. And it was like $24 for the script. And then I released another one called Pixel. So I was up to 3 scripts, and each of these scripts had different admins. So somebody would comment and they would say like, hey, I'm having a problem. I have a bug in, the admin can't do this or that. And so I'm here like managing these 3 different admins, and I'm waking up early in the morning, grabbing my cup of coffee, and 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock, I'm doing support tickets because all of them have these different admins. And so I actually stopped doing support because I got burnt out, and I was like, forget this. I'm not gonna respond to all these people. And people are kind of tough whenever you release a script that you pay for as opposed to open source. They're going to put holes through it, and a lot of people you're going to get people who are really into Laravel and know how the Laravel structure is set up, and then you're going to run into people who don't even know like really what MySQL is, or like, hey, what is FTP? Like, how do I upload this to my server? So support just got overwhelming, and the admin was like one of the biggest pieces that was just so difficult because I had to basically fix bugs for all these 3 different admins. So I was like, hey, wouldn't that be cool if there was a package that I could, integrate to all of these scripts, and then once there's a bug in one of them, it just gets fixed. So that was kind of also one of my main reasons to do it. But I agree with you as far as like after I started seeing stars climb, I was just, and there were some days, and I screenshotted it myself too, when I seen that Voyager had more stars than Laravel did. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. This is so cool. And I was like, telling my wife about it, and I was like super psyched. And I don't think she really even knew what GitHub was at the time. But she was still excited for me.
She's like, whatever, nerd.
Yeah.
By any chance, would you be willing to tweet those screenshots?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I like to see them. I mean, there's something to be proud of there.
Yeah. I think I actually did. I think I tweeted it one time. I'll look for them, and then
I think I remember you tweeting the Laravel one. I remember.
Oh, did I?
I remember seeing a tweet from you on one of them. I thought it was the Laravel one. Maybe it wasn't. But yeah, so yeah, open source. How important do you guys view contribute? I mean, we know Matt's opinion of contributors. Apparently, he's very proud of them, and I am proud to say I have contributed to Matt's project as well. One of the few open source projects I've contributed to, but I have contributed. How important do you feel at this stage of the project? for you, Tony? I mean, I think have you handed the project off? Because I noticed when I went in there recently, a lot of the PRs are being approved by other people.
Yeah. So I actually do have to give a shout out to Mark Topper. He lives in Denmark, I believe, and he has taken on so much from like merging pull requests, and we also have a Voyager Slack channel that he administers that, and he helps people out with issues. And I think that he's kind of taken it to where it's at today. So I originally created it, but he has been contributing. He's been merging in pull requests, helping people out with issues. So when I first released it, I was also getting like overwhelmed with issues, and people had pull requests that I just didn't have the time to download all of them and check the functionality, make sure that all that worked, and then merge in the pull request. I had like my scripts on Code Canyon, my day job at the control group, Dev Dojo that I'm trying to do, and then building Voyager. I'm just like, it just got like way too overwhelming. I mean, that's a good thing. I guess I had a lot of pull requests. So
and you had a family too. Don't forget about the family. That's an important piece. So.
Oh yeah. They're always involved. So Mark basically just took the project, and he's even said a few times to me like, thank you for letting me be part of this. And in my head I'm really like, thank you for helping the project like keep momentum, because just without him, I think that people would have probably said like, oh, the project's died, because after trying to merge in pull requests and do so much, it just got, I just had to not look at that project for even a couple days, or it just got to be too much. So he really helped me with being able to merge pull requests. And since then, there are still a lot of people who are contributing, and some of the stuff I have to watch out for, because it's great that a lot of people are learning how to do that. And I really actually never even contributed to open source before creating Voyager. No, actually, I did to the Codeception website one time. So, but other than that, I hadn't really contributed. And then I was getting all these contributions from people. And I remember this one PR that came in, and I just merged it because it was just a CSS change. And then I ended up downloading a fresh copy, and I looked at the login screen, and I was like, whoa, this is completely different than what I originally had created. So they completely changed the way the login screen looked, and I didn't really like it too much, and other people didn't. So then I just rolled it back. And I remember talking to a friend at work, and I was saying, I got to be careful with some of these PRs that come in, because some of the stuff is taking the project somewhere else. And then his response was, yeah, you got to make sure you take care of your baby. So it's kind of true.
Sorry,
go ahead, Danny. You go ahead.
So I guess to that point of like taking care of your babies, I've noticed on like a lot of different open source projects, people get very opinionated in the whole issues section. And I've noticed, like, how do you kind of balance owning an open source project with like knowing that certain issues, let's say like some people have legitimate issues, and other people are just like super code hipsters who are like, hey, but I think you should be doing it this way. And like, you're like, look, dude, I'm spending a lot of time doing this thing. I'm like doing my best, and like, you don't have to just like crap all over my parade. Like, I'm trying to like do a good job here, and like, you don't have to like hate. Like, how do you kind of like deal with like that kind of thing for open source?
I think, so we actually have right now in the Voyager Slack channel, there's a group of probably like, including me, probably like 4 guys. So myself, Mark Topper, Fletcher, I don't know what his actual name is. And then, yeah, there's somebody else. So we have these collaborators, and they're usually checking out like all of the issues, and I'll usually go to them. And I think all of us coming together will look at the issue, and then if it is something that needs to be addressed, I think then usually all of us will write something in there. And I think one of the main things is people are gonna, write that there's issues, and if it's something that's, maybe just like a nice to have, we might write in there like, hey, we're gonna, maybe put this on the back burner, but we'll, still keep it in there for maybe down the road. But one of the issues that that we've run into is that people can be jerks, like even on the issues. Somebody will recommend something and then somebody else like trashes that guy's, like what he just suggested. And I've even written a few times on there just like, hey dude, come on, we're trying to build something cool together. Like give some positive feedback instead of, just trashing him. So yeah, I think that's one thing is you got to make sure that if people contribute to your project also that you and somebody else talked bad or said something, then you got to make sure that you kind of like back up the person who had the original submit in the first place.
Yeah, that kind of brings me to what I saw, and I'm kind of out of the loop, but I saw a tweet by Taylor Otwell about like a screenshot of an email, something like that, and the guy said, if you don't fix this PR, I'll kill you. I literally will kill you. I don't know whether it's Photoshop, but I'm sure the gist of the whole thing has happened to a lot of open source maintainers, where you get people who just don't have tact. And they just go and say, this is free. I demand it to be free. And I demand it to have all the bells and whistles. And if you don't do it, off with your head. It's unfortunate that we have to deal with those kind of people.
So in my experience, I haven't dealt with like any of that with like with Laracogs and Quarks and stuff. I mean, they're not as popular as some other people's. And that whatever, but generally speaking, most of the contributions I've had have been pretty small things usually, or some really good ideas that have been posted in issues. And then that kind of just inspires me to do like a sleepless code night and spit out a first draft of an idea with stuff. And I mean, a lot of times that's just exciting for me. However, being with the Laravel collective group, I have seen some very mean things and very angry people talk about stuff that it's like 1 or 2 days behind on a release, and they will just shred all of us. And it's like none of us have time, right? Like that's the thing. Everybody's looking for more time to be able to maintain these projects. And so it's like there's a degree of patience that I think that needs to be given to most maintainers, that it's like they all have day jobs and they all have families, they all have friends, and there's only so much code they can write in a given time frame.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like people are doing this like essentially like gratis, right? Like when you run open source, like you're doing this because I like what I do and I want to give back to the community who's given me so much, right? That's essentially like what you're doing. And it's kind of crazy for someone to take it so personally if you, God forbid, either make an error or just go with an approach that they just don't 100% agree with. It's kind of like the gall on certain people to be like, hey, like, how dare you not use this version bump up one, notch, because this is not necessarily a breaking change or something. Like, honestly, like, take the stick out of your butt and let's just enjoy the software and just learn something new and cool.
Yeah, and you could also look at it this way, where if we wanted to write a SaaS app from scratch, how many months, days, years is it going to take? So when we can take something like Voyager or Quarks or even LaraCog, which I used on a project recently to quickly scaffold all my pages, like it's like the amount of time I save is so beneficial that I just don't understand how people could get so angry about it. But so shame on those people. But
Yeah.
one thing I saw, Doctrine was, they were talking recently, and I was kind of half watching from the outside about having a maintainer that I think, if I recall, their maintainer don't work on it full time, and people are feeling like the Doctrine project is dying, that they're not going to do updates. And then there was a GitHub discussion about them getting on this Patreon site where they have to register as like a charity or something, or open source nonprofit, and then they can get on Patreon and people can pay money to the maintainers and contributors. Have you guys ever thought of doing that route for your open source project?
I actually, so I haven't thought of doing like a Patreon, but I know that Vue.js, I think that's actually where he gets all of his backing. So I know that I think LaraCon last year when he spoke, he was saying that, thanks to the overwhelming response of people really liking Vue.js, that he was able to take that on full time. And I think if you go to vuejs.org and you can see his Patreon link on there. I don't know if Patreon is probably how you pronounce it. But if you go to his link, then you can actually see that he has a lot of contributors on there. I haven't thought about doing, adding a Patreon on there, but I think that with every open source project, there is a way to make money from it in the long run. So once it gets really popular and it gets established, and so kind of like Laravel. If you take Laravel, for instance, Taylor Otwell is able to, probably, I would hope, living pretty well because he made the greatest framework in the world. And even though he offers that for free, he also has, Laravel Forge, Envoyer, and Spark. And I'm sure he's doing pretty well with sales on that.
He also has a Patreon as well. He just recently released a Patreon for support for Laravel.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So yeah, I think and if you look at even WordPress, so WordPress.org, they offered their project, free for people to download. I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, why would they offer something, that's completely free? And I think that they understood that, in the long run, once this became so popular, now people need to understand, I guess, what the difference is between .org and .com, even though a lot of people don't. But if people they hear about WordPress and they maybe go to WordPress.com and they're like, oh, it's only $10 a month for this version. And I'm sure WordPress does pretty well. And they also have a bunch of other products that they've built on top of WordPress.org. So I think that even though people do offer this stuff for free, like later on when they do offer to sell something, they have such a big following that those people are basically holding open their wallets like, hey, I want the next greatest thing that you just built because I've used your open source project for so many years. So I think if you don't go the Patreon route, I think that there still is ways to make revenue from releasing an open source.
Yeah, I think a perfect example was when I made my stumble upon famous jQuery plugin. I had people actually contacting me wanting to, hire me like as a freelancer contractor to do some work, like using the plugin or advice about how to use Google Maps. So there's an avenue to take what you're building, and people will see you as a subject matter expert. I'm sure that I'm hoping that's happened for you guys, where having these projects had led to a project that brings in some revenue as well.
Yeah, I think you both hit nail on the head, because it's like there's kind of two sides to that coin. For like, there's like what you're talking about, Sean, which is essentially the whole like street cred like system, where like now that I've put this thing out, I've shown my chops, I've become like a public image, so people know that I'm capable of doing certain things that are widely accepted and like well tested and well built, to where now I can get new opportunities based off of it, right? Like I think the guy who built jQuery got some like ridiculous offer like after he like got so famous with it, right? And then what Tony was talking about, which is kind of the other side, which is like you create this like free product and then you kind of build this ecosystem around it, right? Like the idea is like, first I built Laravel, I'm Taylor Otwell, right? I'm killing it with Laravel, everybody's using it, and now I can kind of spin off these other things on the side that are kind of built off of it, a little bit like, touching it, but not exactly, for more people who are still enterprisey, or not even, but like who are willing to pay for all that work, who are still saying, I'm still true to my roots. I still offer the main thing for free, but now for $5 a month, you can make server deployment super easy with Forge, or for $5 a month, or for however much it is a month, like you get Spark, which is a whole, 25% of your application done for you, or whatever it is. And that's like a nice way to also generate revenue around your open source project, which I've seen like many ways work, not just with Laravel, but in general. Like I've seen that work a lot.
Yeah, I mean, even for me, it's though I mean, like the projects themselves have not been directly, I guess, indirectly associated with income, just because I mean, like Laracogs is the starter kit that I use for every project I'm working on, because that's the easiest way to jumpstart for me. And I mean, I've worked on a few things with Quarks, and then I have worked on a handful of other things. But I mean, you know, I think Tony said it best earlier. He was talking about how he a lot of the open source stuff he does it for himself first, in a way. And I mean, ultimately, that's what we're going to do every time, right? You're going to work on the thing that you're going to want to use. I mean, I even tried to connect with the guys who were doing the Laravel collective stuff, because it's like, hey, I use that HTML and form, you know, component. And it's like, of course I want to be able to help out with that and keep that going, because then I'm going to use it more and more and everything else, right? So you get that indirect financial success out of that sometimes.
So another question to you open source creators, Sean, you included. Because you guys have gone down this path of having to create an open source project, maintaining it, managing it, do you find more in a position to contribute to other open source projects, or is it just, you know, or do you not because of the same reason?
I haven't yet. Like, it hasn't encouraged me or motivated me to work on other open source stuff. Even though now I don't feel as maybe scared as I used to. So before, somebody would have a project, and if I feel like that I may not be able to live up to the standards of what their project was. So I think maybe now it helped with me being scared to submit something, because I'm like, hey, I can actually contribute to this.
To Danny's street cred point, you just do the, do you know who I am line to him?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, but like when I contributed to Matt's LaraCox, I don't know if Matt remembered, but I had to message him like, "Is this okay? Can you just like check it first? I don't know, like I don't want to piss you off or anything, but like, dude, can you check it, please?" And then he was, "Oh yeah, just merge it, it's fine, whatever." Like, but I'm so scared. So you're right. I think Eric, makes you get a bit of a confidence boost because you have that street cred. You say, "You know who I am, buddy? I'll just go make this myself, and I'll take all your stars."
Well, one of the things I was actually really happy to see that that GitHub started was that first-time contributor stuff. So it actually posts in that this is a first-time contributor, and the reason why I really like that is because it helps set the tone for that interaction, right? I mean, it's not like this person has put in a bunch of stuff and now you're looking at with maybe an overly critical viewpoint. It's kind of like, hey, wait a minute, no, this person's trying to branch out and try something new. Maybe this is their first ever pull request or something like that. So I just like it. I like the fact that it helps sets that tone. But in terms of like, has contributing or making my own repos changed how I perceive myself in contributing to other ones? No, it's actually been kind of worse because I get so busy with these that I haven't been able to contribute to other ones, because I was, when I got my first PR in with Laravel and then had one in with Cashier, I was just like, oh my God, I was so happy. And then, but now it's like, no, I've got like so many different things I'm working on all the time. I have no time to dig in and see the latest stuff that's been been built into Laravel and everything else. And it's like, I just get the news and it's like, oh, cool, that sounds good. Wish I could have wrote that.
I actually do have one last question, which is so Tony. So now that Tony and Matt actually, now that you guys like run these open source projects, and you guys mentioned before that you now have like kind of people who you trust, who kind of merge pull requests, do support tickets, who actually work actively on your project. Like, how do you? Like, I think you mentioned one was like from Denmark, and like clearly this is a person you don't exactly work next to you right at work. So how do you kind of go through the vetting process, saying, like this guy, has been contributing a bunch of stuff. How do I either A, get this person to get this guy or girl to contribute like regularly and become like, you know, a team member on this thing? Or how do I say, you know, there's this person who like seems to be itching to become a team member on this open source project, and what's the process by which you say, okay, like, you know, join me on this journey to, you know, maintain this open source project?
So I think the person who, Mark, which is the guy who's from Denmark, it's funny because this was last year around Thanksgiving, and I was in Florida, and I was actually getting messages on my phone, and you know, I got notifications that somebody was submitting this PR and then submitting these issues, and it was that guy Mark, and he was like, hey, just wanted to see if you could you know, check on this. And then he did another one, and he was just contributing code just nonstop. And even though I didn't respond to him for like a day or two, he didn't say anything like, hey man, would love to hear back from you. He just kept on submitting stuff. And then eventually I wrote in the ticket and I was like, hey, send me an email real quick. And then he shot me an email, and I was able to communicate better with him. Me and him talked for like 2 or 3 days over email. And I kind of got to know him and kind of got to know that he really was just, he wanted to add stuff to the product, and he thought it was really cool. So I actually just said, hey, if you want to be you know, contributor or collaborator, because he can merge pull requests and he can you know, do all kinds of stuff in the Voyager GitHub repo. I guess at first I was a little hesitant, but I was like, you know what, you know, I'm on vacation right now, I'll just see what he does. And he just ended up surprising me. And I think it was, yeah, you kind of just got to take a risk. And if somebody seems like they're really into the code and contributing a lot, maybe just even ask them if they want to be a collaborator and a contributor.
You get through the fair amount of trust there because you're talking to someone across the internet who you may have never met, like all of us here. Aside from Eric and Tony, the rest of us have not met in person, which we probably will in New York in July. So I get through a certain amount of trust that you take in the words they type as opposed to the words they say.
Yeah, I mean, he seemed really smart too. So if his grammar was all broken up, I wouldn't have even guessed that he was from Denmark. He was like completely fluent. And not to say that would have deterred me from adding him, but I could just tell that communicating with him was going to be a lot easier, so it wouldn't be that difficult of a process. So I think that's kind of why I made the decision to make him a collaborator.
So Danny, are you going to LaraCon? I saw the little hoo-hoo.
I am going to LaraCon, so I am all ready. I'm all signed up. I'm waiting for my T-shirt.
Nice. Tony,
Yes.
you going?
No, I didn't end up getting tickets in time.
I see. I was going to have LaraChat sell tickets to the cage match between you and Jeffrey Wade. Come on, man.
No, I'm not the biggest fan of New York also. I went there for TechCrunch one year, and I just I don't know, San Diego to New York it just felt completely different to me. I think I might have just talked with the wrong people, but the cab driver, the person at the hotel, they just seemed kind of rude, and my overall impression was that I didn't really like New York. So I'm kind of holding out when LaraCon comes to San Diego.
That's a completely different New York. You must have been in Jersey or something. New York is much friendlier for that.
I will say, I mean, like, I've been to San Diego once and I absolutely loved it. So I totally understand. It's hard to step away from everybody's super nice and beautiful and sunshine all the time. So totally get where you're coming from, but New York's pretty dope too. Just not as well.
Best time I ever had in New York was I was standing on the corner. It was right beside Central Park, and I'm clearly lost completely, just like looking around like a dodo, right? And this guy on a bicycle just stops in the middle of the street, and he's just like, "Where do you want to go? Give me all the details. I'll tell you exactly how to get there. You don't want to take this thing. You don't want to do that. Don't buy one of those cards because that'll rip you off." And I'm like, "Dude."
He was like, "Here, Matt, just give me your wallet, man. Let me just make sure you have enough money."
But he was so helpful, and I'm just like, that was so kind of you for no reason. Like, I'm just some, tourist. And then by the time I finally left New York, I was getting angry at other tourists. I'm like, you slow people, get out of my way. It's like, come on, you got to move,
It's because you're Canadian. They could sense it and they want to be nice is what it is.
Did you hear him there? His accent changed to a New York accent just at the end there. You guys caught that, right? Oh, Matt. We're gonna have to take your Canadian citizenship, you realize? And Tony, like, you got to come to Canada. We take you to places and we you know, treat you all nice. You know, let's say a cab driver, they'll drive you to someplace and they will apologize. You know, this is what we do.
I would actually like to try to visit Canada.
Well, maybe instead of San Diego, we try for Vancouver. What do you say to that, Eric? All right, he gave me the thumbs up. On that note, thumbs down, we got to end the show. We're at the top of the hour here. We've wasted a whole hour here talking about open source and awesome things in that world, and all the great things that Tony is doing, and of course, Matt as well, and of course, me and my my awesome jQuery plugin that was on that. Oh man, what was the site? What was it?
Stumble upon.
Thank you. Oh man, so embarrassing. I almost had to pull out my screenshot. But again, thank you for everybody who came, or who's watching live and who's going to be watching later or listening in the podcast. And of course, thank you to Danny, Eric, Matt, and of course, our special guest Tony. And we'll see you at our next show in 2 weeks on April something. We'll tweet it out. You just find it there.
Oh, wait. Before you let him go, do we have a hashtag for this month?
We don't. I completely
Larafools.
Larafools.
I love it. Larafool, GitHub giveaway. We will start tweeting that out. Larafool, aka Matt Lance.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. I will talk to you all later. Have a good night.